Today we're going to look into lesson 12.5, 6, and 8 for review. And I'm going to pinpoint a couple of major things that many of you guys who are making mistakes with. So let's go ahead and take a look at some questions from page 665. First thing that you'll have to understand is that whenever they're asking you to find the probability, you're going to have a fraction answer. So if you're looking into number 3, let's say, so you have to find the probability when you roll a number cubed twice. First, you have 6, then 2 or 5. So you have to understand that you actually have two different events. So first event and the second event, and you'll have to multiply the probability of each event. First, rolling a 6 is going to be 1 out of the 6 number choices. And then you multiply either having a 2 or a 5 for your answer. So you have 1, 2, and then 1, 5. So you have 2 out of 6 choices. And then from here, you have a couple of options. You can either just multiply the numbers and find out the answer and then simplify, or you can simplify the answer before you multiply them so you work with a small number. I'm going to actually simplify and work with a small number, because I know 2 over 6 is going to be 1/3, and I'm going to go ahead and multiply the numbers. If you multiplied 1 times 2 and have 2 on the top and 6 times 6, 36 on the bottom, you're still going to end up with 1 over 18 once you simplify them. Number 11 from this page is working with a set of cards, and you're going to have pre-algebra spelled out each alphabet. And you have to find a chance or your probability of first choosing a G and then choosing R or A. So you're going to have two events, and they say without replacing the cards. So you're not going to replace it once you choose on your first event. So your second event will have to have one card less from the total. So from pre-algebra, you have 10 total numbers of cards. And out of that, you're only going to have one G in the card set. And then you're going to go ahead and multiply R or A. The chances of having an R or A is going to be actually 4 out of 9. So you always have to pay attention if they say without replacing or with replacing, because your number on the bottom here is going to change depending on that condition. So in this case, I am going to go ahead and simplify again. And I use 2 to simplify 4 and 10, and this is going to be the final answer of 2 over 45. Now what happens when you're not replacing and you already picked one of the items option that you have? Number 23 has the probability of picking a black sock and then another black sock for the second round. So this is a little different than picking two different colors, because you assume that you already picked a black on the first try. So we have total 9 socks, 5 blue and 4 black. So I'm going to have 4 out of 9 chance for the first event. Now for the second event, I am not replacing the socks, so I am going to have one less amount, which is total 8. And then because I assume that I picked a black sock on the first round, I'm only going to have 3 black socks available for me to pick. And then I'm going to go ahead and either just multiply across and simplify, or I can simplify beforehand, which I'm going to do. So I have 4 times 1, 2, 3 times 1, 3. So I have total 1 over 6 chances of picking 2 blacks in a row. There are a couple of things to remember. First, probability when you are showing the possible answer over total, it's going to be a fraction answer. Second one, when you have 2 different events or 3 different events, depending on the number of the events that's going to happen, you're going to multiply each of those probability and then find out the final answer. 12.6 was on permutation and combination. So I'm going to look at page 670 questions and go over some of the commonly missed questions. I'm going to look at number 5. So I think when you have the actual permutation or combination given to you, you guys are better at working on these questions than finding out which of the operation you have to use. So number 5 has 6 permutation 4, which means you have 6 different options, but you're only going to use 4 of them, and the order does matter. So you're going to go ahead and set up the equation as this. And I put this little lines underneath to indicate that I'm going to use 4 of the numbers out of 6. So the first all the way to 4th, you're not going to use all 6 of them, so you can't multiply 6 all the way down to 1. You're going to actually stop after the 4th one. So this is going to be 6 options, 5 options, 4 options, and 3 options. And you're going to go ahead and multiply all 4 numbers, which is going to give you 360 if you multiply all of them. Now, if you have something like this, like I said, it's simple enough, but when you have questions to arrange things, you'll have to decide which operations you're going to use. So I'm going to take a look at number 17. So for number 17, the question says, you have 6 choices of sandwich fillings, and how many different sandwiches could you make by choosing 3 of the 6 fillings? You'll have to determine if you're going to use permutation or combination. The easiest way to determine between the two is to see if you have to have it in a certain order. In this case, we don't really need to have the fillings in a certain order, but we cannot have them overlapping. So we're going to use combination for this question. So you write 6 combination 3, and when you're using a combination, you're actually going to use 2 permutation, one on the top, one on the bottom. So the first one on the top is going to be permutation, and you use the same number that you use for the combination here. So you're going to have 6 permutation 3, and then the bottom number is going to be there to cancel out any of the overlapping ones. So you're going to have 3 permutation 3. 6 permutation 3 means you're going to have 3 numbers that you use starting from 6. So I do 6, 5, and 4. You multiply all 3 of them. And then in the same manner, if you have 3 permutation 3, you're going to have to use all 3 of them. So it's going to be 3, 2, and 1. And then you go ahead and simplify the numbers that you can, so you don't have to work with big numbers. So I'm going to simplify this by 3 and this by 2, and I don't have any more. So your answer is going to be 2 times 5 times 2, which is going to give you 20. So you have 20 different ways to make your sandwich with 2 different fillings. I'm going to work on one more question before we move on. This one has 5-letter permutation of the given letters. So we already know that it's going to be a permutation, and we know that it's going to have 5 for the second number that appears. So it's going to be like this. And then for number 21, you have letters for factor. So you're going to have total 6 numbers. So I have 6 permutation 5. Whenever you have the number on the left, this indicates the total number, and the number on the right indicates how many of those numbers you're going to end up using. So I'm going to have 5 different slots, and then I just start with a 6. So 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. So I'm going to multiply everything, and when you do that, you're going to have an answer of 720. So make sure you're aware of how many total numbers you have, and then how many of them you're actually going to use, because even if you have 8 or 9 letters, you may not use all of them. I'm just going to create a question just to show you how your combination and permutation is going to be different. So permutation is when you have actual order, and combination is when you don't have any order. So if I have the same numbers in combination, that means I'm going to eliminate all the numbers that are overlapping or including the same letter, not necessarily in the same order. So when you have 6C5, you're going to have 6 permutation 5, and then 5 permutation 5. So I know that from my first question here that the question will have a result of 720, but I'm just going to go ahead and write them down so that I can simplify some of the numbers that I'm using. So first I wrote down 6 all the way to 2, and then on the bottom I'm going to start from 5 and then go all the way to 1. And if you notice, you can actually simplify most of these numbers because 5 cancel out, 4, 3, and 2 all cancel out. And you're actually going to have only 6 different ways if you are to find out in a combination. I think most of you guys are doing well with 12.8 so far from the assignments that I see so far. One thing that you'll have to be careful is to set up the proportion. Just remember that you're going to set up 2 different fractions for the proportion. So the equation is going to look something like this. You have part of the sample over the total sample amount equals part of the actual one over the actual amount of the total. So whenever they're asking you to put proportion, you're going to use this equation, not just 1 to 500 or something like that. It's going to be the equation that they're going to be asking for. As long as you have the correct equation, finding out your missing x shouldn't be a huge problem. And when the number is big, you can use a calculator. So I hope you guys take that advantage. And when you're looking into the sample to see if they're fair, you have to make sure that they are first related to the actual event. Because even if they're a random sample, if they are not related to the actual event that's going on, you can't say that's a fair sample. The second thing is to see if the sample group would have any biases or advantages, because when you have those things, your results can be skewed to either favor or not favor your study outcome. So I'm going to look at page 679, question 7. You want to find which restaurant in your city are most popular and state whether that survey plan describes a good sample. So number 7 says interview every 5th person leaving a restaurant in the city. So we have to determine if it's going to be a fair survey plan or good sample. According to this plan, you have a dilemma because depending on which restaurant that you are surveying, every 5th person leaving a restaurant, that means the person already likes the restaurant and that's why they're going to those particular restaurants and eating their food. So we can say that this is not a good example because this excludes people who dislike that particular restaurant. So I summed up as no, it only surveys the people who like the place, not people who doesn't like the place. So it's not going to be a fair sample. Hope you can use your reasoning to decide if the sample is going to be relevant to the event and if it's going to be a fair sample. So for today's homework, it's going to be 12.5 practice worksheets. I think it's helpful to practice 12.5, especially because a lot of people were having a hard time with it. And then also if you watch the video all the way through, let's go ahead and draw a little fish next to your name for your homework.